my new friends, Dedrick and Haelee. So why don't you to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and I guess we will start with Haelee first.
Hi, my name is Haley Moon, and I am the author of The Rules of a Big Boss and the co author to the upcoming book, The Unlikely Journey, Fire and Gold. Oh, and I also have a business that helps to promote my book and vice versa.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Dedrick?
Speaking beyond that, she provided. My name is Dedrick. I am pretty much the co-pilot, and she's the pilot. So, as Haelee said, she is the author of The Rules of a Big Boss, a book of self-love, which you can see here. And it goes in, and it's basically a self-help manual for women and girls to find their self-esteem, to find themselves and things of that nature. And it goes in and it tells about Haelee's journey with, depression, anxiety, bullying, and things of that nature. And she wrote that book in July of last year. And once she told her story, I said, we didn't tell the full story. Let's go a little deeper and, tell the story from, my perspective and go more into detail about what happened with the bullying and whatnot. So when she wrote the initial book, The Rules of a Big Boss, I was her editor and whatnot. And then I went back and I said, let's tell the full story, which is The Unlikely Journey, Fire and Gold. So I'm actually the principal author of that book, and Haelee is my co-author in that book. But not only that, as she was saying earlier, she has a company that's named after the book, The Rules of a Big Boss, LLC. And that company is sells clothing, shoes, and accessories, all for the effect of empowering people. And her company is also the publisher of the book that we have that's coming out again, The Unlikely Journey, Fire and Gold. So Haelee is actually the CEO of her own company, and I'm her chief operating officer, but I'm unpaid. So I'm basically her unpaid intern, more or less. So yeah. So yeah, pretty much the big boss. So all proceeds go to her. As I said, she's the star of the show. I'm just the co-pilot, but all in all, I'm a author, I'm an editor, her strategist, her web manager, her investor, pretty much any and everything she needs me to be. That's pretty much me.
Perfect. So I guess my question is, so what is, according to the two of y'all, you two, either of you explain this, what is self-love and why is it important?
I would say that self-love is self-acceptance and self-compassion. So I would say that it is those two combined because you need to be compassionate towards yourself in the same way that you would be compassionate to somebody else. And what else did I say? Oh, I remember what I said. Compassionate, like it just slipped my mind, but I'm just gonna say something else. So combination of self-compassion and hmm, and accepting yourself. That's what I'm gonna say. So you need to accept yourself because if you don't accept yourself, then how is somebody else going to accept you? If you don't feel a certain way about yourself, how can you expect somebody else to feel that way about you too? So you can't expect what you don't give out. So if you don't give out that like positive, loving energy, then how can you expect that back? You can't, because if you're giving out negativity, you're going to get negativity. That's just how it works. And that's why it is important to love yourself.
And I will say that I agree, because I was having this conversation with someone, and I told them, and I sorry, not that I told them, I asked them, to your point, Haelee, if you don't love yourself, or if you don't fill yourself with love, why do you think someone else would do it when you know yourself better than any other person on this earth? And you made a good point where you mentioned compassion as well, because the love I have for me and the love that you may have for yourself, and Dedrick, the love that you have for yourself, it's a different kind of love that we can get from other people.
Absolutely.
Right? Right? But I think sometimes, and I'll let you two jump in. I think sometimes the love that we're missing is what is that we look for it outside, but it can't ever fill that void. Is that something that either of you have experienced, maybe in your life growing up?
She, but I'll take this question. Um, Let me also backtrack just a little bit too. One thing that she left out when she said self-love is actually the number one rule in a big boss. First thing that she talks about within the book. So it's the number one rule. To your point and to your question about lacking the self-love, absolutely. I did. And I would say I did probably until I was in my mid or whatever. And I cared what everyone else said about me, thought about me, and things of that nature. And my self-esteem was built off of how other people saw me and their perception of me and whatever. And I was very unhappy and miserable as a result of all of that. And I saw the glass as half empty as a result. So to be specific, growing up without a dad, I had identity issues, father issues, and things of that nature, not knowing my story. Because I didn't have my dad to know who my dad was, I didn't think that he loved me. My mom was always at work, and she worked 3 jobs to take care of me. She didn't get child support from her, anything like that. And when she was home, she didn't spend any time with me. She was tired. So the only place that I really got that warm and fuzzy feeling from as far as love was my grandmother. And, I shuffled back and forth between my mom's house and my grandma's house, probably until I was maybe about, I don't know, maybe 8, 9 years old. But by the end, my self-esteem was pretty much set at that point. And I was very unhappy as a kid. I was very unhappy as a teenager and things of that nature. And I ended up getting into relationships with people who weren't necessarily good for me per se. I would say I got into relationships with people who, made me feel good about myself or something to that effect. That's fleeting, because when a person is angry with you, they're going to instantly tell you that you ain't worth a dog, worth a damn, or you don't have a pot to piss in, whether to throw it out of or whatever. And I would find myself in a lot of toxic relationships, especially when I was a young man, a teenager, and things of that nature. Well, when I was about 25, 27, I moved away from home, and I ended up traveling the world and things of that nature. And by traveling the world and being away from other people or being away from my family and my crutches, it gave me an opportunity to look within myself and see my feelings. I couldn't go to my grandmother again anymore to pick me up and things of that nature. I had to look within myself to find those own things or find what I was missing. And while out there being by myself, no longer having the crutches of being able to lean on other people, I finally began to lean on myself. And not only did I begin to lean on myself, I began to lean on God too. And, those things that I would often have to hear other people say, like, dude, you're funny, or you're handsome, or you're smart, and stuff like that. I didn't need people to tell me anymore, because I started telling myself. And then as I started telling myself, my self-esteem started to significantly improve. And it's gotten to the point now where you can't tell me anything. I'm just that confident in myself. And I started having better outcomes in life and relationships and things of that nature once I started to exude that on my very own self-love. So at the end of the day, I would say that self-love is basically, like I said, love of yourself, confidence within yourself to where no one can tear you down. Mary J. Blige has a song on one of her albums. I think it's Stronger with Each Tear. I feel good. So she says, I feel good like the moon is shining just for me. Tonight I'll fly I can be. So I walk around with that song in my head or whatever. And I've had that song in my head ever since that album dropped. And I'm like, can't nobody tell me nothing, because the moon shines just for me. Then it doesn't hurt that our last name is Moon anyway. So you can't tell me that the moon doesn't shine for me and for Haelee. And because the moon shines for us, that's the essence of our self-love.
And I would say Mary J. Blige has so many good songs. And when I would say that when she goes through heartbreak, I know the next album is gonna be fire. It's gonna be
Baby,
great, right? Right? Anytime I hear news about Mary J. Blige and she's going through something, I'm like, I can't wait until she releases an album because it's gonna be great.
absolutely.
I know you came from the point you mentioned bullying,
Hmm.
right? And since your book is you talk about self-love and things like and things of that nature, did you find it difficult to go through the bullying and still have that level of self-love which was healthy for you?
It definitely was difficult because I didn't have self love whatsoever. It doesn't matter if it was just a few years ago when I wasn't really even thinking about this stuff. I didn't have it whatsoever because I was always second guessing myself. I was always feeling like it was my fault. Every single thing that was my fault. It wouldn't even relate to me. And I would be like, nope, it's my fault. I did this, I did that. So it influenced this and then it influenced that. And then I always managed to lead things back to me. So no, I didn't have self-love whatsoever. So it was definitely difficult. And then as I got older and still bullied by so-called friends, um, like it was a lot harder because I fake loved myself. Like I thought, well, maybe if I fake it, then eventually it'll come to me. It did eventually, but at that time, I was only just a little bit of confidence. So it could easily be knocked down and I could easily go back to where I was in the first place. So, yeah, it definitely was difficult. It was hard to balance out all the negative words and then put positive into my mind because subconsciously my mind is taking all the negativity in and then my conscious mind is taking all the positivity in and then that clashed with each other. So since that like clashed with each other, I had to learn how to like block out that negativity and like just cut it off completely no matter how hard it was. So that is what I had to do. And now, since I'm at the point where I'm just like, any mistake that I make, I just apologize for it and I just move on. I don't bash myself. I don't take a second thought. I see what I did wrong. I apologize for it. I fix it. Done. What's done is done. You can't tell me anything else about it once I'm already done with it. So I closed any door that I needed to. And then ever since then, I started to love myself more and more. The more I was by myself, I loved myself more and more. The more I did things my way, I loved myself more and more. The more I thought more about me instead of what this person thought, what this person thought, what they said, what they might think, what they might think, the less that I thought about that and the more I just started to value my opinion and I look at it from their perspective and put myself in their shoes, the more that I love myself unconditionally. Because usually the people who tear you down are the same exact people who tear themselves down inside. So realizing that and
That's
realizing
right.
that same thing, that helped me realize and that has definitely helped with my strength. So now as soon as you say something rude to me, like I can easily just brush it off and just come back at you if I have to. So if somebody would try to start an argument with me, I wouldn't like break down and just like go full on anxious and like arguing and just arguing. It'll just be awful. Um, Now I can just like argue and say one simple thing and it will leave somebody speechless, which is one of my biggest flexes, by the way. So yeah, it definitely was hard, but I got there eventually.
And I love that. And I love to hear the confidence from the two of you because I'm a big advocate and big proponent of being confident within your own skin and not being afraid to show that confidence. And to hear both of you saying that you're at the point where, you know what, it doesn't matter what people say because you have something to come back, you have a rebuttal. And if you need to close that door, you can. And I will add that I think bullying is something that a lot of people experience, but we don't necessarily identify it as such. And I'll give an example. When you have kids that are, we all have been there, that are very young, like when we're, let's say in elementary school, let's say we're 14, 15, keeping someone out of the group And keeping someone isolated is a form of bullying, right? Making someone feel like they're not a part of the collective, right? Or trying to tear down someone's confidence is a form of bullying, but we view it as something else. We may say that, that's just what kids do, but not necessarily, because some of the things that, and you touched on it, Haley, some of the things that you mentioned, you see people do it in the corporate world, you see people doing it at work, you may see people do it in the grocery store, at the church, at the synagogue, at the temple, the mosque, wherever, because they haven't unlearned the behavior,
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
to hear the two of you say that you've reached a point where no one can make you feel that way anymore because you remember how it was to not have the self love. You remember how it was maybe not to have the confidence in yourself and saying that, you know what, maybe these people are right. Maybe I am this way. Maybe it's me, right? Maybe
Mhm.
I'm doing something to deserve this kind of treatment, right? So my question would be for the two of you is that when you're going through the process of building up the self-love that you obviously have now and the confidence you have now, are you surprised at the end result? Or did you always believe that you could get here? It was just going to take some time.
I'm surprised by the end result. I never thought that I would be who I am right now or today. And I would be painfully obvious. I mean, I will be painfully obvious. I mean, transparent in saying that I was weak. And I was very weak as a young man and teenager, young adult. And I always had my grandmother to lean on. With respect to my emotional needs and things of that nature. And I was very much a grandma's boy. Anytime I had a hard time, I would go run to my grandma. My grandmother would always pick me up and give me a shoulder to lean on. She was my grandmother. She was my mother figure. She was my best friend. She was my spiritual advisor. She was my confidant. I mean, my grandma was the thing that my entire universe centered around. And as I said, I left home and I left home in 2005. And even though I left home, I always wanted to come back home. And I always came back home like several times per year so that I could see my grandmother. She was the anchor for me. And my grandma would always tell me, baby, I want you to be strong. And those was what she would always tell me anytime that I would be going through something and I would be borrowing her shoulder to cry on it or whatever, or whine on it or whatever, in my areas of weakness or whatever. Well, she passed away in November of 2010. And when she passed away, I was angry with God because I said, you didn't prepare me for this. Who am I going to rely on now? And this, that, and the third. And he gave me my answers. You're going to rely on me. You're going to rely on yourself. And you're going to rely on your daughter. You are strong enough. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, you're stronger than you realize. So in 2010 or whatever, that's when I started making those changes or whatever. And I started becoming who and what my grandmother always raised me to be. So what God had to do is he had to basically say, I'm going to take away your crutch. And now that I've taken away your crutch, you have to walk without it. I'm going to pull these training wheels away from you. You now have to ride without it. And you have to ride without it because you're not a son and a grandson anymore. You're a father now. And if you continue down this path of weakness, your child is going to suffer. You have to find the strength that your grandmother instilled upon you because your mission is you are going to raise this little girl. And I got custody of Haelee in June of 2010, about 2 or 3 weeks before Father's Day. My grandmother passed away 5 months after that. So I said, how do I go on this parenting journey alone? How do I go through this journey through life alone? And he told me, you've got everything you need. You just have to trust me. You have to trust the process. So I went along for the ride. I've said, I don't have anyone to lean on anymore. I am going to have to take this walk and I'm going to have to take this ride by myself. And in taking a walk and taking a ride by myself, I realized that what he said to me in my dream when I prayed and asked him these questions was true. I found my strength, and I found my strength of character, conviction, and everything once my grandmother was taken away from me. So, I say all the time, and I say it today, as a matter of fact, I wish that my granny was here so that she could see me now, so that she could see what her grandboy became, and so that she could see that I finally realized and found my strength. Of course, she's looking down and she could see it, but I wish she could see it in person as opposed to spirit. So I'm absolutely surprised and looking at myself today versus yesterday. It's like night and day. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, if any man be in Christ, he's a new creature, old things have passed away. So the former me, who lacked the self-esteem, who always needed his grandma, was always hiding under his grandmother's skirt, that boy has long been dead. This is a new creature and a new vessel that stands before you today.
I love it. I love it. Haelee, anything you want to add as well?
Um, I feel like I always knew that I would get somewhere, but I just didn't know exactly when. I'm that person who I like to just like take confidence in every single thing that I do. I'm I'm humble, but I also like to brag. And when it comes to bragging, it's more about things that I've like done personally. Like, for example, when every time I reach my lowest point, I always bring myself back up. Every time I feel myself going back to my lowest point, I always bring myself back up. I don't ever let myself fall through that hole, and which I have done plenty of times before. So when I was going through all this stuff, I was like, nope, the world is over. I'm over. I just want to live day and just eventually pass away. That's what my mindset was like. And I knew deep down that I was going to get somewhere, but I was like, nope. Mm-mm. So then like without me consciously knowing, I did end up bringing myself up, and I have explained what I've done to do that. And that's something that's a strength that I think that is something that you have to learn rather than something that is exactly taught to you. So people can tell you this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you do, but in reality nobody really knows but you. So don't allow other people's like input to influence it. While that may have worked for them, it will not work for you all the time. So just do what feels right. So in the time that I was being bullied and still being bullied, like recently, like this was actually like literally a year ago, pretty much. So a year ago, when I was still quote unquote friends with one of my quote unquote ex best friends, she was very toxic to me. And she tried to kill me twice, and she has encouraged me to kill myself twice. And that's actually the second time that this has happened where somebody has tried to kill me twice and encouraged me to kill myself. So I was just like, I kind of knew what to expect, except in that exact moment, like I didn't even think about it very much. I was just like, oh, just horse playing. No. And I think the reason why I saw it that way was because she was known for horse playing with literally everyone. So I just took it like that because I was so used to seeing that. And I didn't exactly think that it was any more than that until after we became friends. I mean, stopped becoming friends. And we actually stopped becoming friends over the dumbest reason, but it did give me time to actually think about it. And I was like, whoa, she did this, she did that. And of course, I'm not going to paint myself to be a good guy because I wasn't a good friend either. We were just not good friends to each other, period. So I'm not going to make myself seem like the good guy, but I am going to say that she wasn't the good guy either. So considering that we were both toxic for each other, neither one of us loved ourselves and neither one of us were good to ourselves. So how could we be good to each other and actually have like a healthy friendship? So this was like something that has happened plenty of times, like with all of my ex-friends. This is the same exact situation, except it just got worse. And I finally realized it. And actually, my ex-best friend from like 2 years ago has actually told me this before. And she has told me, you know what, you may think that you're the good guy all the time, but this, that, and the other. And I would just like kind of brush it off. And I was like, no, it was just a joke. I was just joking around. It's not serious. Until I actually experienced it for myself and experienced what she experienced, I never realized it. And that's pretty much the reason why every single year I would have a new best friend and a new friend who would just get progressively worse. So in those moments when I started to like, it finally like dawned over me and I finally realized it, I did beat myself up about it for a while. And that's what caused like most of my insecurity, because I realized what I've done before and I realized what I could do. I know what I'm capable of. And sometimes I don't even know what I'm. So because in those moments I would always like shy away from certain situations. I would be super defensive over every little thing, and I would just make it worse for myself over and over again. So finally being out of that situation and actually taking the time to actually think about it, because something that my teachers used to always tell me is to stop and think. Don't just react. Don't just do this. Don't just do that. Actually stop and think. And when I finally actually listened to them, when I finally did it, that's when things started to turn up for me. And now any toxic friendship that I see that is turning into something more than it should be, I cut it off immediately. And it may be hard for me and I may like think about it 24/7. And I know when I think about it 24/7, that's when I know I have to cut it off. Because if it was just like one thought, then no biggie. But if it's like something that I'm constantly thinking about and constantly worrying about and constantly just like kind of uncomfortable with, then I know that it's definitely something that I have to cut off, which is something that I actually did recently, about 4 months, 4 weeks ago. It was 4 weeks ago. I just cut off two toxic things. Actually, it was one of my ex-friends and her cousin. So I cut them off, and things started to just look up from there. Because right after I cut all of that negativity off, and I cut off any source of negativity, and I officially blocked things out from my mind that I didn't need to have in my mind, that was the moment that that was like the moment where things started to look up. So what I mean by that is like I started to get more sales with my books. I started to feel a lot better within myself. I felt at peace and like a weight was lifted off of my shoulders. I felt a lot more secure. I felt a lot more like stable and a lot happier than I did with them. And like it hurts to say that because I wish I didn't have to, but that's the truth. And I'm honestly glad that I did. I just wish I didn't have to. So, but that being said, I always knew that I was going to get somewhere. I just didn't know exactly how, and I didn't want to accept it at the time.
And I think that's what some people have a hard time with is removing toxic people from their lives. And you mentioned your situation where you have people that were trying to kill you, and even then it took you some time. And you look at there's 7 billion people on this earth, right? And you know what, the way the three of us are getting along today, not everyone can get along with us like that, right? The energy back and forth. You're telling me your story, Haelee. Dedrick, you're telling me your story, and it's good vibes. We're getting along. And it's good energy. But there's people out there that our energy just doesn't click
Right.
with them, right? And there's a saying out there, I'm trying to remember actually, where it's your spirit irritates their demons,
Yeah.
right? Where there's something about them that when they come in contact with you, you're like, whoa, like you have to keep this person, arm's length from you, right? Because to your point, it's toxic. And I remember going through what I like to call a cleanse where I have my phone, I looked at my phone, and what I did was I went through the address, I went through the phone numbers in my cell phone. And anyone that made my heart race, I was like, okay, I gotta get rid of this number, right? Because you're remembering what the person has put you through. You remember the negativity, you're remembering the poor choices, you're remembering what they've done to you. And it's not that in some cases, it's not that you hate this person or you think that, you know what, I'm so much better. It's just that, you know what, I've done something, this person has done something, we're just not good together. That goes for friendships, that goes for romantic relationships, that goes for colleagues, acquaintances, that goes for everything. And I think so many of us have such a hard time doing that. And I'll take it back to you guys, and I'll start with you, Dedrick, and say, was it hard for you to remove toxic people or toxic things from your life as you continue this journey to self-love and getting better?
No, not really. I was a toxic person. I was a toxic person and very self-defeatist, and it all stemmed from my lack of self-esteem in myself. And with Haelee, her journey as a young lady might have been easier had I stepped in and shielded her a little more, but I didn't, and I didn't intentionally because I had confidence that she would find her way. And I didn't want her to make the same mistake. I didn't want to make the same mistakes with her that my grandmother made with me, and always being a crutch. And I said, she will find it, and if I see that she's not finding it, at a certain age, okay, I'll step in and I will come in with a save. So to give you an example, when she was very young, I used to always tell her, every day, you're pretty, you're beautiful, and so on and so forth. And I want to say I continued that up until maybe she was in first grade or second grade or something like that. And the way we would do it is I would take her in the bathroom, I would pick her up, and I would hold her up in the mirror, and I would ask her, what does she see? And then she would say, I don't know, what do you see? And I would say, I see a pretty, pretty princess. Well, as I said, I stopped doing it or whatever. And I told her, at this point, you're old enough to where you have to see these things for yourself. I can't tell you anymore. Because if you can't see it, you're never going to see it. You don't want to have your self-esteem based off of what others see. It has to be based off of what you see. So I'm going to stop telling you, and I'll tell you, moderately or whatever, but I'm not going to always be there to do it for you, whatever. And whether I was right or wrong, I don't know. I'm going to say I was probably right. And I'm going to say I was right because look at what we have now. We have her as a motivational speaker, a published author, a small business owner, and so on and so forth. And she's out not only motivating other young girls, but she's motivating other women too. And, my toxicity was based on the lack of self-esteem. So I was the person who probably would have been bullying Haelee when I was younger. Now, of course, I would not have done it because she's a girl. But if she were a boy, I probably would have. And that was my own toxicity and my lack of self-esteem and my own lack of self-awareness. But as I grew older and started to grow within love within myself, I became a different person. So the toxicity that I had within me was rooted out. And then it was funny because God brought things around full circle. But he said, I'm going to give you a reminder just so you don't revert back. I am going to link you up with someone that's very toxic. And this person that I'm going to link you up with is going to be worse than you. So I'm going to give you your match, and I'm going to give you your match times 2. So that way you can look in the mirror and see how ugly you truly were on the inside. And after meeting that person, it forced me to do it forced me to practice more self-awareness than I already had. And, it said, more or less, let's go ahead and plant this seed and dig these roots deep so that you don't revert back to who and what you were. You will always remain this new creature. So now, instead of being that beacon of toxicity and that glass half empty type person, now I'm a glass half full person. I am a positive. I help people. And instead of, leeching off other people, people leech off of me. And when I say leeching, I'm talking about, mentally, spiritually, and stuff like that. So I ended up going from someone who needed a beacon of light to someone who gives out light now.
How about yourself, Haley? To hear, him say those things, and he wanted you to grow up to be this very confident person, and sounds like you are, like you're accomplishing all these things. How does that make you feel?
Um, for one, after him saying that he like intentionally did it, I was like, wow, okay. At first, like when I first found out, I was just like, because that's normally my reaction to things until I actually think about it. So after thinking about it, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. He was right. So like me finally admitting that now I feel like I'm glad because of it, because now I can help other people. And without having them feed on me, like I didn't have to, on my dad, that's something that I allowed them to do too. So I told them certain things and then I allowed them to take it from there. I allowed them to fall on their own. And if they ever needed my help, I would be there. But at the same time, I wouldn't be there every single time because, you know, they have to learn on their own. So, and this is specifically goes to my closest friends who, whenever they're going through struggles, like for one of my friends who is bisexual, she was coming out to her parents and they didn't accept her. So since they didn't accept her, I did. And I just made sure that she knew that. So her knowing that she didn't need acceptance from anyone else because she knew that she had at least one person to accept her. And that's all that she really needed. And while she did still have to face judgment from other people, she did end up thriving in the end simply because all she needed was one person to believe in her. And that was enough for her. So for me, like not having like that crutch or anything and just having something to fall back on rather than having something to carry me through it, that has helped me a lot within helping myself and figuring things out for myself and helping other people too.
Perfect. And I love hearing that, especially the connection between the two of you, how you're growing something very special and you're helping others achieve what the two of you have been able to achieve. And this will be one more question for you, Haley. How does that make you feel that you're part of someone's journey to become better?
Um, it does make me feel like that type of person who would be like, no, you can't tell me nothing because I already know I did this. I already know I did this. It definitely does like make my ego a lot bigger than it already is, which I don't want to say I'm egotistical, but I kind of am. So it definitely helps to boost my ego and make me feel a lot better because I'm like, well, I helped this person. You can't tell me I'm a bad person because I did this. And you can't tell me this, you can't tell me that because I did this. And seeing my friends happy, that makes me happy. And like seeing them be able to make it on their own without needing my help, that also makes me feel happy because I'm like, well, I helped give them the materials to do that. So I feel happy. So, and even with people that I don't know, inspiring those people, that's like, wow, that's a stranger. I don't even know this person personally. And like something that I said when I didn't even know it, that helps them out. And I'm just like, wow, okay. So, like I said, it definitely boosts my ego big time.
Perfect. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Enjoy the confidence. If someone calls you egotistical, arrogant, full of yourself, self-absorbed, I'm I love that. Honestly, when someone tells me that, it's and it's not that for those of us, it's not that I view it as it's detrimental to others, right? I wouldn't be so arrogant to think that I am better and that I should crush other people. It's not that. It's that when the self love or the love you have for yourself reaches a certain height, it is going to come off to some people that way. And it's because you're just overflowing with confidence and love for yourself. So I wouldn't ever consider that to be a negative if it's something that you're using in the right way. And I guess my final question for you guys would be, how much of a difference do you want to make in the lives of others? And what do you want the next generation to learn from both of your journeys?
That's a excellent question. The biggest thing is that I want other people to learn and know is that you can do it and you can really do anything that you set your mind to or your heart to. And I'll say this and I'll answer the question indirectly. So a boy grew up without his dad, and a lot of ill things were said about him, of what he would become, and this, that, and the third. He proved all of the naysayers wrong. That boy ended up dropped out of high school, and he was definitely told he was going to be a failure. He ended up going back to high school, finishing up, ended up going to college, finishing with honors, got his master's degree, has a fabulous career, and this, that, and the third. And then, got married, got divorced, and realized that he needed to get custody of his daughter. Everyone told him, you're not going to win. Going to court. No man beats a woman in court. And, mothers always win. And these people were telling me that's from my own family, family members, friends. My grandmother told me that I wasn't going to win. My mom told me that I wasn't going to win. And I proved all of the naysayers wrong. I did win. And, there's more that I want to say, but I don't want to say it publicly. But, it wasn't an easy road. And, Haelee was not who she is today. I had to put a lot of work in, a lot of prayer in. We both had to go to therapy and things of that nature. And she became this totally confident person, and who we see today. And I always hear, people say that a woman can't raise a man. And, there's some truth to that. But, check this out. If a woman can't raise a man can't raise a daughter either. Well, I'm living proof that a man can raise a daughter. And if a man can raise a daughter, as ill-equipped as he is, a woman can definitely raise a man, because she has advantages that I don't have. And, I always hear women complaining about, the father not being in the child's life and just that and the third. Well, that's great. And the reason that is great is because by my dad not being in my life, I said, and I made a promise to God, that I would never allow a child of mine to have the same feelings of hurt, abandonment, and not feeling love that I did. And because of that, Haelee and I are sitting here today, and we have a bond that's tight as glue. But had my dad been there for me, I would not be who I am today. I actually needed to see the world through my grandmother's eyes. And by seeing the world through my grandmother's eyes, I am able to do what I do today through her. So I have no reason to be angry or ill towards my dad. He did me a favor. God knew what he was doing in advance. He saw down the road that I couldn't possibly see. So at the end of the day, the biggest thing that I want people to leave people with, at the end of the road is, again, you can do it. You can do anything that you set your mind to. No one can tell you what you can't do. You're the only person that can tell yourself what you can and can't do. And if it's your mission and your purpose, your passion, you can do it. You can overcome any obstacle that's set before you. And we're overcoming obstacles, and we're breaking generational curses, because Haelee will be a better version of me. And I hope that she leaves a better impact on the world than I have.
And Haelee, do you want to close with what you want to add?
I would
Might
say
be tough to beat that, but go ahead.
I would say the biggest thing that I would want someone to get out of it is, like my dad has mentioned, like, that you can do it. But the thing is that I want people to get is, like, from what some of the things that I've said, is the things that you need to make it. So, like, take your time. Like, all the little things, they're all for a reason. So all the little things that you go through that you may not even think is a big deal, or that you may think is like the biggest deal in the world, all of those little things, they all lead up to that one thing that you need in your life that you're going to be so happy to find. So what I have to say about that is, just take your time, allow yourself to feel all of the feelings, allow yourself to feel depressed for a moment, allow yourself to feel angry, do the things that you need to do to let out your anger, do the things that you need to do to let out your sadness, scream if you need to, and just scream out of the blue if you need to. Just do whatever it is that you need to, and just allow yourself to live in that moment for a while. And then when you feel that you're ready, when you will feel that you're ready one of these days, then take those steps to make it. And I know something that has like stuck with me that somebody has said to me. I don't remember who said it to me, but someone was like, I think it was actually my teacher. She told me not to rush. Like when it would come to some of the things that I would do when it would come to arguing, I would just like spit out words. Like I would just not know anything that I was saying whatsoever. When it comes to my work, I would always rush. I always had to be the first to do everything. I always had to do everything amazing. And she was like, slow and steady always wins. So she was actually, I think it was my fourth grade teacher. She was the one who like more of inspired me to take things slower than I was. I always wanted to rush things and make things go at a faster pace because I wanted to reach a certain thing by a certain time. When in reality, that time that you have in your head is nothing compared to what God has. So you may think that you know what's best. You may think that, oh, me moving fast, me just doing all of this, it's going to work out. No, it's not, because if that's not what needs to happen, then that's not what is going to happen. So just do what you need to in that moment, and then the rest always follows. So this one day, if you need to cry, cry. This one day, if you need to feel angry, feel angry. If you need to convert your sadness into anger, do it. Just do whatever you feel is right in that exact moment, and then everything else will follow through exactly how it should. And you may think that it's a bad decision. You're like, no, because I can be pretty impulsive. Well, I am like the queen of impulsive decisions. I always make them. That's just how I do things. But I can personally say that even with my impulsive decisions, it always follows through well. And even though I just do things out of the blue and then I'm just like, whoa, I shouldn't have did that. Me doing that has helped give me a better outlook, not only on other people, but it's helped me give a better outlook on myself in general. So in taking things like slow and just living in that exact moment rather than living in the future or living in the past and just living in the present, that has helped me a lot more with accepting my past and moving towards the future. So basically living in the moment and accepting that things have happened and they happen for a reason, that is how you move forward. That is how you leave things in the past. So definitely just live in the moment and take things slow.